Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Concussion Nerds podcast. And today we get to be joined by a special guest. Kendall Hagenson is a psychotherapist, mental health practitioner from Vancouver, Washington, also my fellow Jane ambassador. So we had the pleasure to meet in person last summer in North Vancouver, and I just loved Kendall's energy, her approach. She does so many things in this space for clinicians and clients, and I can't wait to dive into a little bit more of that today. But Kendall, tell us a little bit about you and what you love to do. And yeah.
Hi, Natasha. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, we know each other as Jane ambassadors, and we've gotten to chat a few times. So, who am I? What do I love to do? As
You wear many hats.
I do, I wear quite a few hats. I am a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Washington State. The specific type of therapy that I do or did for 10 years before phasing out is called somatic psychotherapy and dance movement therapy. And it's a very specific form of psychotherapy. I did a lot of work with trauma for many years, specifically around chronic pain and medical illness and medical trauma. So, I'm also in the world of EMDR therapy. So, we could get into that a little bit. But essentially, what I love to do is help people live in their truth and their passion and really live lives that they are in alignment with who they are. So I kind of find different ways to do that. And one of them was as a psychotherapist, but I also own a clinic in Vancouver, Washington, as Natasha said, called Vancouver Wellness Studio. And we're a multidisciplinary collaborative healthcare clinic. So we have everything from mental health to acupuncture, naturopathic medicine, massage. We have a spa location with aesthetics and sauna and IV therapy. And so a lot going on there. But what brings me so much joy is leading that team of people
Mhm.
who all come from different backgrounds in general, but also different backgrounds as providers. So everyone has different specialties and expertise to give. And the other way that I kind of live in my truth is through business coaching as well. So I love coaching other clinic owners around the US and Canada and kind of being witness to fulfilling their dream, but
Mhm.
also seeing like that real whole person, like root cause healthcare flourish in communities where it hadn't flourished previously is just so awesome.
I love that. I love all of it. I would love us to start by digging into the concept of trauma and trauma informed care,
Sure.
because the people that are obviously listening to this podcast are very commonly individuals who are on a persistent concussion journey and clinicians who are supporting individuals with persistent concussion. And so, obviously, that's an individual that could be having symptoms for 30 days up to years upon years. And in traditional physical therapy schools, and I'm going to say probably chiropractic schools and our allied health schools, honestly, there's a very poor job, if any, done on educating clinicians on what trauma informed care looks like and how I think absolutely pivotal it is that we are all learning in our practices today. So I
Yeah.
would love from your lens, and I know your skill set of take weaving this into how you build your multidisciplinary teams and coach is beautiful. So I would love for you to share truly to kind of give some context like what is trauma informed care and what are the things as clinicians we should be thinking about when we're trying to act in a trauma informed way?
Yeah. So let's start with what is trauma. So this is a term that is being used a lot present day, which is amazing and it gets misused quite often. So I think the most important thing that I always like to convey about trauma is that it's actually not so much about the experience, but it's about the person's response, their brain and body's response to the experience. So we might consider an event, someone's telling us a story, we might consider that story to be traumatic, but their brain and body might not have had a trauma response to it. Then the next person comes through the door and we think their story wouldn't be traumatic for us, but they had a trauma response to it. So I do like to give the example of a car accident. And so I just always give the disclaimer of people listening, if you have been in a car accident recently, which could be highly possible, if we're talking to people with concussions, to just take care of yourself as I give the example. But it is also an easy example to understand. So you have person A and person B, they're in the same car. They're driving down the road, they're about to go over a bridge, and they get in a car accident. No one is physically injured in the accident. Person A goes home, they sleep fine. They get up the next day and go, "Oh, wow, that was kind of scary, but glad I'm okay. Glad I'm all right. Everyone's fine." And they get up, they drive to work, they drive over the bridge, and they're okay. They might have a little kind of natural, like, ooh, a little anxiety, but they're okay. They can function and it dissipates. Person B cannot go to sleep that night. They're having flashbacks of the accident. They get up in the morning. They cannot get in their car. They can't leave the house. They certainly can't drive over the bridge. And now they're having panic attacks. Why? Well, because trauma compounds over time if we don't process it. So there's a widely known study in the field of psychology called the ACEs study, where they looked at ACE stands for adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
And they looked at, all these things that happen in childhood and what happens to us as adults. So they found that, okay, if you score high on this kind of ACEs test, it has things like parents divorced or, of course, things we might think of physical, sexual abuse in the home, not having enough to eat, things like that, that you, as an adult, you have a higher likelihood of chronic disease, of course, anxiety, depression, but the physical health impact was really like the most important finding of this study, right?
Mhm.
So increased chronic illness, heart disease, all these things. So we all go through life and we have these different experiences. So let's say, yeah, our parents were divorced and then maybe we did get in a car accident. Maybe we had a chronic illness and we have a concussion. Then, all these things kind of stack on top of one another. So person A in the car either processed through those things or didn't have those things in their
Mhm.
life. And person B had them, compounding on one another. So when that happens, the kind of capacity for staying in what we call our window of tolerance, and many of you might have heard that term before. Our window of tolerance is essentially our capacity that we have for our bodies to stay regulated. And so the more trauma we have compound on itself, the smaller our window gets. And then even everyday things might now be outside of our window and they take us into our stress response or our trauma response. So, probably a lot of your listeners have heard of fight or flight and can understand what a dysregulated nervous system might be like. But that is why we can't look at a situation and say that was traumatic for that person. It's only about how their brain and body respond. And so, person B in the car accident, their thread in their brain of that trauma response is just primed and ready to go. So, when they had that car accident, then that response kicks in. So, when trauma memories are stored differently than normal memories, and there's a lot more research coming out about this now, which is super cool. But everyday memories, like person A in the car, they went to sleep and that memory was stored in long term memory in a nice linear fashion with a bow around it. And it's just a memory. Person B, because of the trauma response, the memory tries to go to long term memory, but it's fragmented. So it doesn't get stored properly. So when people, 20 years later after a traumatic event, if they're in your office saying, "Why can't I stop thinking about it?
Mm.
It just keeps looping into my brain. Why is that happening? Why can't I just think my way out of it?" And that's why. because the brain has a natural mechanism built in to process through events like that, but it gets stuck in these moments. So that's trauma in a nutshell.
It is a lovely explanation of it that people can tangibly, I think, take to understand it in such a better
Yeah.
way. My brain goes to, like, so many different things. So, we understand what trauma is,
Yeah.
and so I think too, with the population, particularly here, it is definitely an element that we need to be aware of because many of our clients are also simultaneously struggling with PTSD, anxiety, depression, nervous system dysregulations. We see it regularly in our practices. So, if we have this understanding of kind of what trauma is and kind of high level what that means with our nervous system, as clinicians, what does that mean for us in terms of an informed practice to be able to best support our clients in their healing journey?
Absolutely. So I think it's really about coming back to the basics and taking time to pause and think about, okay, I'm assuming every person coming through my door has trauma, has experienced trauma. So, with that assumption, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z practices to help them feel safer in the environment. So, we want to be careful about this term safe because it can also be very triggering for people who have not felt safe. But we always say, like, we can create safer environments, but we're never going to create an environment that is safe for every single person. So,
Okay.
it's first of all, just owning that for yourself as a provider or a business owner. We can do as much as we can, and knowing that at the end of the day, we are not going to be able to be that safe place for every single person. So, trauma informed comes down to the details for me. It's about considering the whole person all the time. So, starting with that first interaction with your front desk or you, if you're a solo provider, that, how might this person communicate best? Well, how did they communicate with you the first time? You know, and can you communicate with them in the same way? Because they felt comfortable doing that. So, whether it's email or phone or video or whatever, it's thinking about, okay, well, they felt safe to make the connection that way. So, I'm going to connect back that way. And then it comes down to how can we create a client journey that doesn't have unexpected surprises? So these are things like, details of how to get to the physical space. What can they expect when they get there? Detailed intake forms that have different languages on them, depending on who you're serving, signage when they get to your space. It's this level of detail. How can they communicate with you if they have a question or get lost? All those things. When people enter our clinic, our front desk or the provider gives them a tour of the entire clinic. Why do we do this? First of all, it's a trauma informed practice so that the person understands what is in the space, where are the exits, and if they walk this direction, what can they find? And also, where's the bathroom? So, I mean, there's a lot. We could spend hours on gut brain connection, but when people are in a trauma response, they need to know where the bathroom is. And there's a lot of connection there. And it's really important that that is accessible to people. We feel it's important to have an ADA accessible space and we make that known. And so it's things like that, showing the space. And then that all happens before the person gets to the treatment room.
Mhm.
So that's all trust building and safety before they actually get to the treatment room. And then they're in the treatment room. And depending on the type of provider you are, sometimes you have to ask really detailed personal questions in the first meeting to be able to do your job. Right. So that's where we get into, okay, trauma informed language. And it's being considerate of all the things, right? It comes down to terms like relax. Things like that can be really triggering to people, right? of course, being aware of pronouns and race and all of those things. And for me, it typically comes down to just slowing down.
Mhm.
And when this term gets thrown around in alternative healthcare a lot of like meeting the client or patient where they are. And what does that mean? Right? It means attunement. It means slow down and witness where this person is. And is it going to be helpful to them if you say, let's just take a deep breath and relax? If you can tell that person's anxious coming in, that's not typically going to be the most helpful thing, right? So it's being present with that
Mhm.
person and noticing, well, how does your body feel when you're with them? That's probably how their body feels. And what can we do with that information? And, things like asking permission is a huge one. It's just huge. Even I think of like hairstylists, right? Can I touch your hair? Can I take this hairband out of your hair? Can I help you remove your earrings? Like permission. So I would say it breaks down to slowing down, asking permission, and removing unexpected like surprises.
I love it. And I know that you could literally talk forever on each of those singular things. I want to shift us away from the client for a moment and I want to shift us
Yeah.
into the clinician because I've
Yeah.
heard you. So, we were lucky enough to have you come speak in the concussion nurse program as well. And you gave this example and this analogy that I loved because as a clinician, a lot of clinicians in this space are incredibly empathetic. And so there's a challenge sometimes to also not take on our clients' emotions and struggles as our own. And
Yeah.
you gave this beautiful analogy and this beautiful example in Concussion Nerds on as the clinician, when we are working with challenging and emotionally like charged individuals, how can we also support ourselves?
Yeah. Hmm. Was it the egg
I think
analogy?
it was the egg
I
analogy.
was like, what did I teach? I don't know.
I think it was the eggs. I remember being like, I've never heard this before and I love it.
Okay. Okay. We'll teach the egg. So this is one of my absolute favorite tools just as a person. And it's really simple to do. So you got to bear with me through it because at first you're going to think, Kendall,
That
no.
I
Okay.
promise it's worth listening.
Okay. So you can do it seated or standing, but you're imagining that you have an invisible egg around you. And so it's like a protective layer essentially. And it's invisible to the outside world and it's permeable, but only for the things that you choose. And this is where choice and agency are really, really important in supporting ourselves and supporting others and trauma. So you have your egg. And when I do it, I like to physically like feel the barrier with my hands all around my body. I can feel the egg. And I'm also very claustrophobic. So I remind myself I can see out and I can get out at any time. Right. So you have choice in your egg. So the reason why this is powerful is because if you're working with a patient or interacting with anyone in the world, and you know going into it that it's going to be difficult for you, and you don't want certain things to take over your system. You can also do it in the moment if it kind of surprises you that it's impacting you. You can start into this visualization. But let's say you know going into the interaction with the patient that it's just a really difficult case and that it's been impacting you and you've been taking it home with you and you're starting to feel that like vicarious trauma. So you have your egg around you and then you picture what are the things between you and the client that you want to let through. And I picture it from my heart space to the client's heart space and kind of like a thread or a rope that's going back and forth. And what am I allowing in from them? And what am I allowing from me to them? Right. So typically that's okay. Well, I'm going to be present with them. I'm going to tune to them. I'm going to, give them unconditional support, whatever it is. And then, okay, what am I allowing from them? And then it moves to what do you not want in your system? So then you think about, well, what has been impacting me? Is it that the client is actually using sexist language, which has happened so many times in my office, or racist language, right? And that's causing a judgment for me, right? And that's impacting how I'm helping this person. But the reality is that's not the presenting issue and they need help with something specific and I have signed up to help them. So how am I going to do that? Right?
Mhm.
So it's things like that or whatever's impacting you. And you picture that coming from the client and just bouncing off your egg or sliding off your egg and it just dissipates into the air and it doesn't come into your system. So you can do that visualization for however long you need and then go into that interaction and see how it feels. And you can do the egg again after the interaction if you need some more separation. And then a simple one, after a session that one of my favorite acupuncturists and people who worked on our team previously taught me is just to picture a rope between you and the patient and picture yourself cutting it after the session as a way to just move on and be ready to support the next patient.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing those.
You're welcome.
I know one of your other passions is absolutely supporting clinicians, and you do that through multiples of ways. Your business coaching is one, but you also have this amazing retreat that you do, and I know it's
Mhm.
coming up this fall. I think we said in September, yes?
Yes. Yep.
Um,
End of September.
Beautiful. I would love for you to share with the audience what that is.
Yes. So the retreat is called the Creator Circle Retreat, and it comes out of what we've created with business coaching through Wellness Center Creators. And so Wellness Center Creators started on really virtual business coaching and some local in person, but mostly virtual. So we could, hang out with whoever across the globe. But the retreat was born out of, we started doing group virtual coaching, like a 12-week experience, and did that for a few years in combination with individual coaching. But the spring coaching group was kind of this like anchor, right? We would do that every year. And then I just really got this urge to bring people together in person because I just love connecting with human beings and
Mhm.
feeling, actual humans in the room. So that's what it was born out of. We did the first in person retreat this past September. And the more connected and impactful experience than I even anticipated or had hoped for. And it was really so lovely to have clinic owners all together feeling supported. It's
Mhm.
such an isolating role. I mean, if we're really honest about it, it's a pretty isolating role. So the Creator Circle retreat for 2024 is happening September 23rd through 26th in Vancouver, Washington State, USA.
I am always
Um,
giggling here because I always think she's from Oregon, you guys, and then
yeah,
realize that all
yeah,
you have to do is cross a bridge and
yeah,
you are in Vancouver, Washington, United States of America.
yes. I have to say it a lot. People think I'm in Canada. So USA, so our Vancouver Wellness Studio, the healthcare business that I own, we have two locations and they're very close together and we do different things at those locations. But the retreat is hosted at both of our locations. So our spa location is connected to a hotel on a waterfront development. And it has like a pier and lots of restaurants and walking and community. So everyone for the retreat stays at the hotel. And then we do most of the group coaching and smaller coaching work up at our clinic location. My favorite part about this retreat and why I just love being able to design something like this is because oftentimes in our field, if we go to a conference or something, it's so heavy with the information. There's not
Yeah.
enough breaks, there's not enough nourishment, and it just
You're
blows
exhausted.
my mind. Like the fact that this is how we're teaching healthcare providers and it's not a healthy way to teach, it just bugs me. So, you have to create something different. And it just doesn't work for my own system to go to those things. So this retreat is a coaching retreat for wellness business owners of all types, but it is a coaching blended with wellness
So good.
experience. So each morning starts with movement. We have coaching sessions. We have small group, large group, individual. We have group wellness experiences throughout the day, things like community acupuncture. Then everyone has a chance to have an individual spa or wellness treatment while they're here. And it's just a nice flow. And there are facilitators from all over the US and Canada who are, successful clinic owners and coaches. So it is a chance to be in community and to learn the things you need to learn. So we curate it to the people who are coming. So it's not a
Mm.
preset curriculum. It is based on where people are at in their business journey and what they want to learn. And then we create that for them.
I remember looking at it last year and I wasn't able to go, but it sounds like the most magical, like dreamy blend of absolute like self-pampering and
Yeah.
wellness will still, because I'm similar to you, and the power of like connecting with humans in
Yeah.
person is so lovely. I love our virtual stuff too, but I love the in-person stuff. The other piece that I love so much about what you said, because I know there is a cutoff for registration, and
Yes.
so you can curate those days. Like, I think that that is so
Exactly.
beautiful. And so if someone is interested in connecting more with you, whether for business coaching or the retreat,
Yep.
or just to learn more about your clinics as well, what is the best way for someone to reach out and connect with you?
I would say the most direct way is just to email me,
Okay.
Kendall, Kendall, at wellnesscentercreators.com. And you can also find information about coaching and the retreat on the website at wellnesscentercreators.com.
Okay. We'll share both of those things in the notes as well. Kendall, thank you so much for being here. If
It's a
you
pleasure.
If you could share one last leaving comment for the clinicians in this space who work in wellness and all these things we've talked about, what would be a thought you'd want to leave them with?
Just trust yourself and keep going. I think a lot of provider entrepreneurs out there, we all have those moments of imposter syndrome or not knowing what to do next or feeling like, are we doing enough or is it worth it? All this work that's going in, and just know that you're doing amazing work around the world and it's needed, and you're impacting people's lives in a really positive way. And don't forget to take care of yourself.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here. Always a pleasure to connect with you. For anyone who's interested in connecting with Kendall, we will drop all her information in the show notes. But thank you so much. And we
Thanks,
will
Natasha.
see everybody on next week's episode. Take care, everyone. That's today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, give us a share, give us a tag on Instagram, and please never hesitate to reach out. We love communicating and connecting with you. Until next week, my friends, have a marvelous day.